Hey, back here today with Trinity4, but he's not in South Africa anymore. He's back here. Dave, hello.
Hello, Karen. Good to be back, but it has been an incredible 11 months in South Africa and a whole lot of thrills and spills to get us to a point where we made the choice to come back. We had to have a real surprise. Yeah, that's the special offer. In this world. Oh, in this world. There's Easter eggs in this world, yeah.
Anyway, hello to you all, and welcome back.
Thank you. That's the other two of the Trinities. He's turning 5 in a few days' time. What a journey.
What a big boy. Yeah, he's been all over. Yeah, he can go, well, when I travelled the world.
Yeah.
With Mum and Dad.
And here we are. Here we are 3 days after Easter, and he's just discovered that there are Easter eggs in the world.
Everywhere. They're everywhere.
Yeah, and they're everywhere. Yeah, they are. But we've been everywhere, and 10,000 miles we travelled on road in the last year, and it would have been more, but we didn't have a car for a large proportion of the time we were there. We went out with high hopes. We were meeting some flat earthers for the first time. They were out in Bali with Mark Knight, Wakey, and we'd been chatting online for a year or longer, and they made this proposal, which ended up being like, let's go to South Africa. We got some Bitcoin money. Not me, but they do, and we will set up a home together. They've got a young child, same age as Zizi. Set up a home, do growing, a whole lot of things, a whole lot of ideas. And unfortunately, it was like online dating. When we got together, within a few days, we felt uncomfortable with the long-term prospect of living together. So, Andrew and I were in a bit of a pickle because we didn't have a return flight to England. We didn't have funds, really, more than a month's worth of funds. So we were... in quite a bind, actually.
I talked to you a couple of times, or I spoke to you out there. I was a bit upset that you'd gone. I know that we haven't actually met each other, but, over the years we've had a few hangouts, and you're just one of the troupe, and then you went.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I'd been trying to find ways to make it work here. I'd been to Portugal in 2020.
Did you enjoy that? Did you enjoy that? Because loads of people went to Portugal, didn't they?
Yeah. I mean, Portugal has a lot to offer, but for me, it didn't feel like South Africa feels in terms of, being able to speak the language. It was. To be honest, I felt like I was, because I sort of joined I went onto a mountain, and there were no running streams, which is a really important thing. Plenty of wood, but no running streams. And water supply when you're off-grid is so important. And anyway, so the mountain itself was mostly people, who'd realized that there was something about the modern way of life that wasn't right for them, but they hadn't, yet been willing or able to plumb the depths of the deception that we're living through. So for me, it felt like I was just moving myself from, England to an off-grid version of England, people wanting to kind of continue as though we're still these material Darwinian
thing is, with Portugal, it has better weather than we do, doesn't it, for longer?
No doubt.
That's what it is. I wanted to ask you something very quickly, as we're just on, different places. I was really shocked when you were telling me, when we spoke in you were South Africa, that you just said that you were only a couple of hours ahead.
Yeah.
Is it 2 hours?
One. Yeah, and only one during the daylight saving period in the 6 months.
How can South Africa just be 1 hour ahead of us?
Well, I mean, it works on either the globe. Well, as much as we understand the way the globe model works, it works kind of
Turkey is 4 hours ahead of us.
Yeah, but in order to get to Turkey, you're going to fly east. You're going to fly almost directly east. Whereas South Africa is south, as we call it. So
Yeah,
it's
but
and it's
it just
mostly
shows
south.
you, doesn't it? It just shows you stuff, doesn't it? South Africa's only
Yeah,
two.
yeah. I mean, as a youngster, because I was fairly astute about these things when I was young, I did wonder why South Africa didn't have two time zones, because it's quite wide, even
You
in
think
the
in
sort of
America
inaccurate
they have
depictions.
4, and Australia I think they have 3.5 because they have a half hour somewhere. Some of the states are half an hour ahead or something,
Right.
but they have all those different times. But South Africa, the huge, great lump of land, the whole of Africa is. South Africa's only 2 hours ahead. I thought that was.
Yeah, well, yeah, but because it's like a if you imagine the sun coming towards the west from the east as like a wave that spreads from the north to the south, if you like, and that whole wave is reaching the same place at same place at a similar time. Those places that are in line with that wave. How the movement of the wave works and so on is an interesting one, but I don't know for sure how that would work, but. Yeah, I mean, that's not a particularly surprising thing, but something David, uh, uh, deep inside the rabbit hole, David Weiss asked me the other day when we were having a chat, was that the sunset goes and comes, the sunset leaves quickly and the darkness approaches very fast. And we commented on that, Andrea and I. It's like, wow, it's amazing how quickly it goes dark here in the summer. Not like the European summer in which the sun might go away, but the
Yeah,
lightness
when
in
the
the
sun
sky
starts
remains.
going away, like it's on the horizon, we could have nearly an hour of it getting dark.
Yeah, yeah, but within 5 or 10 minutes, you can go from I can see things to wow, you better get the torch out because you're going to trip over stuff.
Ah.
Um,
Shall I put
yeah,
the video on? Shall I put the video on now?
yeah, sure.
Do you want to explain a little bit?
I
It
mean,
says
I
Ebony.
just wanted,
Oh, go on.
I was sort of just introducing your listeners and yourself to the story just
Yeah,
behind
yeah, go for it. Carry on then.
where
It's
these
just there's nothing
videos come
playing. But carry
from,
on. Yeah, carry on.
because Andrea and I are now in a few weeks in, and we're like, okay, we're in dire straits. We catch a flight from Cape Town to Durban, and we leave half of our stuff, including my tools, because we left thinking we were never coming back, honestly, and we didn't know, because we thought lockdowns were never going away. And in the time we were there was quarantine hotels and all of this sort of stuff, and it was just ramping up. So we didn't see a way back. At that point, my father said to me, well, you're in trouble, son. I won't help you at all while you're here. But if you want a flight back to England, which is where you should be, I'll pay for that. And that's he kept to that promise or offer, and that was the help he gave me. He was willing to buy us a ticket back. No help on this side, no help on that side. I'll get you back to England, and then you're on your own. But it felt
You
at that
might not
point.
like it if you want to get a job quickly. McDonald's or anywhere like I know that it's not particularly great, but jobs like that are plentiful here at the moment. If you go to, I know McDonald's probably is the last thing, but if you want to go and get some,
It is the last thing.
right, okay.
Anyway, so
Sorry, Dave. It's just that those kind of jobs are going here.
yeah, I mean, I'd much, I hope to get some physical work.
Well, that's all right. You can
going,
announce it. Dave's back in England. He's struggling a
Yeah.
little bit here, everybody. He's in Bournemouth. Anybody around
Mm.
the Bournemouth area, Dave would do
Yeah, I'm really
gardening,
good at.
moving.
Well, yeah, landscaping work. I'm looking to work with the landscaper because right now I have no tools and equipment, and to set that up would be too costly.
So what happened then? Your dad just said
process.
he paid for a ticket and you went, right, we're going. It was that quick.
What when in?
Well, you
in
coming
South
back to
Africa?
England, I mean, because obviously it was quick then.
No,
You've left...
so this is this we're talking about April, May last year, and
Right.
and so I'm like, oh, we have no money, but we got a ticket from Cape Town to Durban, where I had some school friends, two of whom were still talking to me after killing our friendship with level water and flat earth and so on. and so one of them kept us for about 4 or 5 days in his small flat, and then by day 3, I think I'd said enough of negative stuff about the Vatican, and he's a staunch Catholic, that he was like, "You're going to have to go," So then we started.
It is bad, isn't it? I've had friendships like that where you think you're really good friends, and then this stuff happens, and you realise that you're not friends at all.
Well, it's that there, because people's beliefs are so, and we see this in the world today, even in flat Earth, people's beliefs are so powerful that they are detrimental to relationships with people who call them out, because it's like you can't call out people's beliefs anymore. You can't say, no, that's a belief. And when you do, it's like I'm insulting their scientists that they love, or their Pope, or whoever their religious icons are. I'm insulting them. And that's one of the hardest things. And even, of course, as I say, in the flat Earth community, it's kind of riven with people, so insistent that their model.
I had this a few weeks ago with someone where they were talking about what's happening in Ukraine, and I was going, "It's not real," and they go absolutely loopy at me. And then the person I thought was my friend said, "And she said the Queen's probably dead." They went, "Oh, absolutely possible." And this person said, "I'm leaving until she goes," and nothing had happened. And this person had got really angry over nothing. I felt really upset. But you think, well, I'm not going there again.
No, I mean, and it's a difficult one, hey, knowing how to tread
You're just talking, and then they say this stuff to you, and you're like, they pounce on you. They're really hard, aren't they, these people? They just don't want to hear anything other than what they believe in.
Yeah, and it almost sounds like hate speech when you say things that you think are counter to their belief, and we've all been caught up, and we may be caught up in that ourselves, and this journey of mine this last year has been a journey of humility and soul searching, because so I end up at this flat earther called Lone South African Bear. He finds out I'm in South Africa. He pays for 5 nights accommodation at one place on this river, beautiful place by the sea. And then I don't know, I can't remember the exact timeline of it, but we're in Durban. We're backs to the wall, and I don't know what I'm going to do next. Maybe take this flight to South Africa, to England. Endure whatever, because I think the quarantines, they were already in place, the hotels and stuff. Oh man, I don't know how that was even going to work for us. But and so I think, the only thing that I can do, man, is go and talk to the people down on the beach, and I do that. We take taxis.
Yes, because I put out a little video, because obviously you were going to do this. I promoted it on one of the videos.
Okay. Well, we went down to the beachfront. I did some chalking, and I did some talking, and wow, I had some phenomenal interactions. I got a little bit back behind the scenes with some drug users, and they were happy for me to film them, injecting themselves.
Asking you. I've put Ebony and Ivy on, and basically you're talking to a police. You're talking to a police officer on a horse. So what happened there then?
Okay, well, I guess I can't remember the exact times point at which this occurs, but it's in this first few months in South Africa, and I was getting more emboldened in talking to people on the beachfront, publicly, and so on, and people were in the main really like hearing what I was saying. People would say, the Africans have a particular way of speaking, and they would say something like, I hear what you're saying, or something. I hear you speaking, and they would so often affirm what I was saying to them about, we are being tricked, and that they're hiding the divine within each of us, and they would really resonate with that. I mean, men. That's one old car guard came back to me after I'd spoken to him earlier. He said, "You know what? No one has moved me in my heart for many, many years the way that you've just moved me." And I'm a church man. I had a few church people go, "Wow,
that's nice.
The way you've connected me." I've had Muslims, give me money and wish, God bless my journey and my walk and my work. Serious Muslims, gangsters. So on this day, I just felt, I'm gonna go and ask this policeman, or I'm gonna go and tell him what I think's going on, and that
Did he?
he and I
I mean,
have a
obviously,
bond.
we're talking over the top of it, but what does he say then? Because I could put that in if you want us to hear what he says.
Well, it's not really him speaking in this video, unfortunately. This is all kind of me delivering a monologue to him, which was really for the benefit, I suppose, of my
He
interaction
stuck
with
his
him, but
thumb up
more
then.
over the camera.
He stuck his
Pardon
thumb
me?
up. He stuck his thumb up then.
Is he going away from me now?
Oh right, yeah, he is. He's moving away. It looks gorgeous, the beach, though, Dave.
Okay, so now he is with his commanding officer. He's a senior guy. He's 48 years old, senior guy, and he's with his commanding officer, who's riding further ahead with him as they go off the beach, right? And then you'll see him stop his horse, and then he gesticulates to me to cut my camera, because I was still talking, and he calls me over and he says, "I just want you to know, I agree with everything you just said to me."
Wow.
And he said, my colonel, he knows too that there's a scam going on, but there's nothing we can do about it.
Does he say that on camera?
No, that
Right.
he wanted the camera cut, and that was what he was gesticulating. That's where I take the camera down right at the end of that video. But he was there. That was a special moment for me, because later on Christmas Day I get pushed off the beach by 8 black policemen because I wasn't wearing a mask. I was flyering by this stage. I'd had 5,000 flyers, which I handed out pretty much all myself, person to person.
Wow, well done.
Just informing people of their God-given sovereignty, and their ability to consent or not for things to happen to them. So I mean, on the back of, by this stage, my funds had run out, but I was getting donations, sometimes very generous donations sent to me by YouTube subscribers to my old channel. And so with that money, we had managed to stay sometimes right near the beachfront, and became friends with a lot of the homeless people there. And those guys that I originally saw who were doing the needles, I was talking to them about their connection to the Most High and their sovereignty and their divinity and so on. And I'm not shitting you. One of them comes up to me a few months later, maybe, and while I'm doing a live on the beachfront, and he says, "Dave, I've been clean for a month." And he ends up going. He may be in this video. He ends up going. A guy called Lindo. He ends up going home to his family. Disappears from the beachfront, and I never heard from him again. But people said no, he went home. And a few others clean up over time. There's a guy called Eugene. There's clips of him at different stages, like, of sobriety. And I think by the time we were leaving Durban, he was clean, although I couldn't say that for sure now. But one or two others went clean. And I particularly befriended one guy called Patrick, who was in a bad way, and he got beat up at least twice in the time that I knew him. Once at least by security, because security there can be black on black. Security can be sometimes heavy-handed with the homeless and those trying to eke a living from the beachfront. So lots of homeless and people looking for money for shelter for the night. Lots of stories of how people were treated during the lockdowns, how they were kept inside the tent camps. These tent camps weren't allowed out unless it was for medical reasons, were surveilled by drones, treated abysmally in that time. The police on many occasions will wrap them up at night and say, and take them, many miles away from the coast, and then drop them off, take away their gear, maybe give them a little bit of a beating too. But
well, it sounds like you've got away and got out lightly and everything. Then.
Yeah, I mean, so no. Well,
did you feel that anybody attacked you for being a flat earther or anything like that?
Well, flat Earth goes down very well with Africans. Actually, the most educated Africans, don't step back from the indoctrination very easily. But the majority who I encountered, who I point out, what, this ocean is level, and we've done tests as far as we can tell. There is no curvature over any body of water. And they're happy to to accept that, man. They don't have much trouble accepting that at all, because they don't have an ego attached to the moon landings, you know. Whereas us, we're so evolved, and we we think we're so smart that our rocket technicians can take us to the moon, and Elon Musk can take us even further with a budget which must be a fraction of the size of, say, some other billionaires in the world. And yet here's this kid, he can just go up to the moon, to Mars, and go here and send cars there and so on. Fantasy land that most the Europeans are caught up in, but the Africans not so much. So that went down really well. Some of the message about what I lost my channel over wasn't obviously flat Earth. Actually, it was to do with the face bandage business that we're just been going through. You know. Yeah, talking about that and suggesting that these things were harmful. Went against some Hes, who is it? Not Ho, World Health Organization. Went against guidance.
No.
Three strikes and you're out story. And I just steamed ahead, and I was having these great street interviews, and I wanted them shown. And the irony is, my channel is getting fewer and fewer views anyway.
I got a strike on Unscrambled a month ago, so obviously where they didn't have time to do things, they've obviously been going around and slapping other channels, aren't they?
Yeah, well, mine were happening in real time. It wasn't for anything I'd done in the past. It was just for the work I was doing on the beachfront. But the work on the beachfront was beautiful. I got donations from people. One man, half Zulu, living in Australia, sent me money to get, help provide more food. A lady in a checkout, as I was checking out, she was, "What's this all about?" I had these homeless guys with me and trolley full of bread and cheese and meat and stuff for them, and I explained the story, and she gave me money. And on a few occasions, people handed me money. They're like, "Wow, we love what you're doing." And so I did a bit more of it, and then it was costing me a lot of money to take the taxi from the place we were staying at. We'd found a place to stay about 50 kilometers from the beach, 40 kilometers from the beach, and it was cheap for us to stay there, and it sort of had a deductible. We'd worked out a cash deal with this guy who was the owner of it. And so, because we were there, if he had no bookings, he was happy to have us in there, because even, so it worked out well for him and for us, but expensive on the taxis. So, I didn't go down to the beach every day. And one time I go down to the beach, and all these guys, 4 or so guys, approach me and say, different guys, they go, "Oh, this farmer, he's come down to meet you." So I'm like, "Well, that's interesting." I get in touch with this guy called Francois. He's a farmer, lives a few hundred miles from the coast, and he's like, "Oh, I love what you're doing with your activism and so on. He followed us, from before, and I'd like to come and meet you." And in the end, he invites us to stay very kindly at his farm for in the end, a few months. But it's like, "I want to try and help you out, get a car. I've just lost my farm to the banks and whatnot, so I don't have much on offer, but I got a little money salted away here. I'm gonna get you a second-hand car so you can carry on doing that." Now, the money took a while to come, because it required for the sale of something and blah blah. So in the meantime, his brother, who, I won't go into the story too deeply, but his brother says, "No, I'll let you borrow my car because I'm not using it. I've got a motorbike. You can have it for 2 months." We use it for 2 months. We go straight down to Durban and we use it. We do all this activism. The radiator explodes on the highway one day. I have to deal with fixing that. And I managed to get this guy, Patrick, back to his grandma and fill her larder with food, and just some amazing kind of experiences of being able to help humanity and do them some kindness, as well as I'm still needing to raise a 4-year-old boy who is far from home, unsettled, doesn't like for the sort of regular, and we were hopping from a bed and breakfast to Airbnb to a place that was cheaper or offered to us, because we had the odd occasion, on 3 occasions in total, that we had free accommodation. So we were bouncing around an awful lot. I suspect probably more than 25 addresses, or different beds in the time we were in Durban. It was a lot of hopping around, and police. They love pulling people on the highway there, and I got pulled 4 times in South Africa.
Whoa.
The roadblock. Yeah, 4 times. Let's see your papers, and of course I didn't have papers, and my South African papers are out of date, and I won't go into all of that for legal reasons.
Oh dear.
But I and they demanded in South Africa, it's like, where's your license? You got to have a license. Anyway, on all 4 occasions they let me go. I explained I was doing God's work, and wasn't wearing a seatbelt or whatever, and didn't have a license to show them. But I managed to sort of hold my own. There were so many tense, incredible moments. One moment where the day I was taking Patrick back to his mother, I had to stop by the roughest part of town near the harbour, where his shelter was, where he normally stayed. He wanted to pick up his ID book. His ID book, he needed 100 Rand, which is £5, to get his ID book back, because they were holding it in lieu of that payment. So it takes a while. When he gets out of the car, he says, Dave, just lock the car when I get out, okay? Because and this is the guy who lives in a rough world. He's like, this is a rough place. And so I locked the car, and I've got Andrea and Alexander in the back, and then it's 5 minutes have passed, and in that time, still hasn't come back. In that time, I noticed these 5-6 gangsters sitting on this wall, eyeing me out, talking,
Oh,
looking.
so you've got an
talking,
injury
looking.
on your arm. How did you do that?
I fell out of a tree. When I was on the farm in Dundee, Francois' farm, the Flat Earth farmer, I offered to do some work. He didn't have his.
Day.
Yeah, I slipped out of a tree that I was pruning, and it just grazed the heck out of my inner arm and forearm, but it healed pretty well. So anyway, so so I'm sitting there looking at these guys and thinking to myself, I have two options now. Either I drive around the corner, give Patrick 5 minutes, and then come out, pick him up, swing around, pick him up, or I get out the car and go and talk to them. So I chose the latter, and within about 5 minutes, maybe 7 minutes, I turned around, and all of them but maybe one was smiling and happy, and I knew I didn't have to worry about locking the car or anything like that, because these guys had heard enough about who they are and what the deception is to know that, yeah, okay, we don't want to hurt this guy. He's like doing good stuff here. And that's really what I've been doing. I've been called to it, but I feel that I didn't quite specify it. That's not why I went to South Africa exactly. Of course, I wanted to do activism, and I never realized how well I would be received. Honestly, there were people who said to me, hey, I'd like to walk down the beach with you and spread the word of God. Not that that name is particularly, the only name that it could be applied, but I want to spread this word with you. And another man said, you're the new Nelson Mandela. So I had a phenomenal response from people in South Africa. It was with a heavy heart that we left the Durban area. The Durban area has just been hit by heavy flooding and a lot of trauma and lives lost there. So I am feeling for those people, especially those that are homeless. There are good people that are out there, feeding people, and there are efforts that are being made by the local authorities. But generally, it's on the back of this corrupted system, and that's always going to be a bit of a patch job, isn't it? So that was that period, and then we had to return the first car we were borrowing, and then within the next month we had got this new car and we're on the road again. And Andrea and I made a decision. We were going to try, and with the funds we had, we got given some money. I forget exactly. Maybe it was Robert Patterson, but we get given some money. It's like quite a chunk, and maybe £500 or something. Wow. And we're like, yeah, like we're like, wow, we've got enough petrol now, money, and enough for maybe a week's accommodation to get as far as Cape Town. We might get to Cape Town and then, make a decision. If something comes up, if there's a farm that we can live on or something like that works out, that we can, take this off-grid, adventure lifestyle idea to the next level, then let's do that. But let's just take the drive. So we took the drive. It's 1,000 miles. We ended up doing about 7,000 miles in this car, something like that. No, 6,000, more accurate, yeah, 10,000 Ks. In this big Mercedes, like a V6 Mercedes. It cost me a fortune to fill it up. So I tried to drive it as gingerly as I could, and we had some adventures, went on the Wild Coast and the Coffee Bay and other places, and eventually hooked up through a flat earther called Michael Farrell. He put me in touch with this lady Angie and Rod. They were part of a flat earth, sorry, they were part of an off-grid community in the Cape, about 2.5 hours from Cape Town. And we got set up to go and spend time there. And in the end, almost 3 months we spent in this forest, beautiful forest with a big river going through it. Unlimited wood. Karen and I could lie in the bath for hours if I wanted to, just pushing more hot water out, because we were using a boiler, a wood-fired boiler to so we had unlimited hot water there. It was quite an irony. It was so off-grid, and yet two of the things you pay so much for, energy and water, we had in abundance. So I had bathed more in the 3 months I was on that in that forest than I have in probably the last 15 years in total. So it was kind of good fun. But the community, and we managed in the end to even do a flat earth festival in the same forest 2 weeks before we left, which was great. It was South Africa's first flat earth big meetup of that sort, and we got a shout out from Mark Sargent and David Weiss and Karen B, Brian Staveley. I should have mentioned it to you. I don't know if I did at the time, but I was sending out flyers.
Don't worry, we've got you now, and it's great to talk to you. So it's great hearing your story. So carry on.
Yeah, so all the way, and every time I stopped, I was handing out flyers at these small villages and places that we'd stop at, or petrol garages, and generally the conversation would be like so good. I mean, an overriding thought is how many times guys said, "Hey, come back, if you're ever back in the area, please stop by and chat again," and people were really enjoying hearing this message, and that there was someone saying something that was outside of the scope. My friends, some of my Zulu friends that I made in Durban, were trying to get us onto a radio show so that we could say some of these things that people never hear spoken. But not everyone loved the message. Of course, there's lots of people who believe that they are that the government, the authority must be believed. Oh, my little boy. What's up, Zizi? The government must be followed, and there's no, just follow the government. Like, okay, even if they created something like apartheid, you just have to follow them then. Sorry, I'm being.
I don't want to say too much, by the way, but on this video that we're playing, it's got a flat Earth thing on it, but you'll like a lot of the people have got the nappy things on. You're taking pictures. You're taking pictures of them.
1 second, Karen. I've got a little boy who's not gonna. Whoa! What happened here?
Oh.
Look at all that. There's they've got these plastic Easter eggs that you're gonna fill them with exciting things, like a secret. Well, we do an Easter egg hunt.
This will be something special inside.
There'll be something special inside.
There will be something special inside. My marshmallows.
Oh, don't tell me it's going to be
chocolate.
Really?
Wow.
That's
exciting.
I want it.
Okay, it's mine. It's mine. It's mine.
It's going to be on a call, my baby.
I just want to finish talking to Karen. I won't be long. You? You don't? Oh, you want me to do it with you? Let's see if I can talk and pack these. This was to try and commit to being like a full-time dad as much as I could be, because this is part of where we get it wrong, I think, in society, is that dads and mums are too often away from their own offspring, which is the primary, one of the primary things we're here to do. So he is, but he's also had a certain with mum and dad being extremely stressed at times, it can't help but rub off on the child or affect their well-being, their state of happiness. They like familiarity. They like to go to the same park and swing on the same swing, kind of thing. So it's been he's still kicking off. I don't know if you can hear, but
I can't actually hear him. Oh, don't kick off. He'll be all right.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I understand what you mean, but I suppose because he's quite young, maybe he's not going to remember a lot of it.
Well, this is an interesting thing because Andrew's studying childhood trauma and how it affects our psychology today. And
yeah, we talked about this last time on our last hangout. Do you remember? She talked quite a lot about it.
Oh, so much has happened. I'll be honest, but it is the case that we store energetic signatures from events that occur in childhood, even if we don't remember them, and they can.
Supposedly, we've got thousands of hours of parental tapes running around our heads. So what our parents? So if your parents are always going, "You're thick, you're useless, and stupid," that's what you think of yourself. They're running around your head.
Yeah, and you develop a unique, particular way of internalizing that, managing it, dealing with life despite the dissonance of that, which is the same with this idea that you're spinning. You somewhere inside you have to come to terms with that. There's something wrong with you that you can't determine any sort of spin
I
of the
suppose
earth.
what it is if you're cracked and broken a bit, nobody likes to look at the cracks. But when I was in my 20s, I found this book called "I'm Okay, You're Okay." And that explained a lot. By the age of about 3, you've already decided for the rest of your life how you're going to treat everybody and how you're going to think. And so basically when a baby's born, a baby needs you, so it doesn't feel very good. So I'm not okay, you're okay. And then the next one goes like, I'm not okay and you're not okay. And then it goes, I'm okay, but you're not okay. And that child's about 2 or 3. But as an adult, everything should be, I'm okay, you're okay.
Yeah, I think where we don't maybe realize the effect of childhood trauma today is that trauma somehow stays with us.
Because most people don't realise that it's everything that's in your subconscious you need to sort out, and that's where you hide all the things. And most of us put things there, so we don't really ever maybe remember it again, but you do.
Yeah, and it just becomes a certain behaviour.
So you're not your authentic self anymore. You're not being you anymore. You're now full up, or you're thick, you're stupid, you're useless. And what it was is none of that was you. That was other people saying things to you and doing things to you. So really, in my 20s, I did this big soul search in myself. I needed to know who I was. I just couldn't. My marriage had broken down. I ended my marriage, but it had broken down. I had no way of explaining it, and it just set me on this psychological path. And then for about 3 or 4 years, I just zoomed it in, all this psychology, to understand it. I had to understand it, who I was. So I did. You have to know who you are. There's no point otherwise. You're never going to believe anything because you don't know. Oh, well, maybe I do, maybe I don't, maybe I like that, maybe I like this, maybe I don't. The biggest thing you can do for mankind is work out who you are as a person.
Yeah, but now we need the tools to do that, because it's what we tend to do.
You have to often, like Andrew's done, is face your child, face things that happened in your childhood, and instead of looking at it, oh well, when mum did this, and it's all round other people saying things, you've got to look at it through your own eyes. Because often we look at it through, oh, when we went to see Auntie and you came with me, and it's all through everybody else's eyes. You've got to look, and it's not, who you are, meaning go back, understand your childhood, understand what happened to you, because most of us didn't have nice childhoods. Some of you did, but some of you didn't. And then what it is you carry on. What it is you're carrying forward all these other people's things that they said to you, and it wasn't you.
Yeah, and in the case of these Africans, they've been so traumatized, through various means over the last century.
Yeah, the television. The television's done it all.
Yeah, and obviously government policy, economic realities of this strange dream reality that we're inhabiting. So these people are traumatized, but they're willing to acknowledge that the system that they're in is a deception, even if they cannot intellectualize the incredible interwoven, nature of all elements of what we call this system. So that was, that kind of brought me to a point, I would have liked to have maybe found a way to make the off-grid thing work, but it wasn't the right situation for us, and there were certain energies pulling us constantly back to England.
At least you
we have
got
the older
back to
children
your
here.
homeland. At least you got to see your dad, and at least you did some things and learnt some things.
Yeah, and I touched hundreds and hundreds of lives. I'm not even exaggerating on that. I really did. I had the most wonderful time of activism. A tiny fragment of it on camera. The majority of it was just me.
Is it
barefoot,
masked there, like it's masked, like when we went up to London or we went on that, it's not going to be on the news. We, really we're stopped. The police are there. Is it like that in Africa or not? Is it a bit more low key?
I went to an anti-mask rally in Durban on the beachfront one day. It was very poorly attended, maybe less than 100 people. And actually, I think they even approached the police or applied to the police to do this, and the police promptly turned up, or they turned up around about the same time and said, "No, you guys have to disperse. You have 15 minutes or whatever, or you can talk for a half an hour or something, I can't remember, but then you can't walk as a group along the beach
So basically
promenade
they're quite controlled then, so maybe that's why they don't always look into things, because they believe what they're in, they're being controlled, and they don't look further.
Such a nuanced thing, Karen, because the Europeans are in their own sort of propaganda bubble, and the Africans, well, it's curious because they obviously didn't trust the apartheid government, and so they were given their freedom through the aegis of this African National Congress, and of course the African National Congress is just falling in line with the European or the world order or whatever. So
Roman Empire thingy, Bob.
It's difficult for them because they're following their own sort of tribal leadership in a way, and they're leading them astray. So
it's so sad. I've repeated it and I've even put the videos out. But Trump, even if people said that it was fake, he had a double eagle laid out. It's an eagle laid out. So Biden's got an eagle laid out on his seal, and Putin is flying a double eagle laid out. They work for the same people.
Yeah.
We're in some Roman Empire thing.
Egyptian. Yeah, it's a chess game. It's always chess. It's black versus white. They want to keep that dialectic.
And they use propaganda to keep us apart.
Just not sure now. I'm not sure. It seems like there is an inevitable sort of outcome to all of this. So they're proceeding with this plan with some sort of knowledge that there's an inevitable outcome, which is that they get their asses spanked. But I guess as they try and put in place the means or technology to ride through the storm and come out the other side on top again. That's just a theory, but yeah.
I did know someone in China, and they just said they live their lives like we live our lives like you do. There's none of this going on. The only thing is, in their communism, the police don't like you harming anybody. That's when they'll wade in. After than that, they leave the people alone, and everybody just gets on with their life. And you get to the news, and they're always something. The Chinese are always something.
Yeah.
And it's just not really happening. And then, of course, obviously, I've got Amy in America, and I've got Gillian in Australia. So we talk, and we can see what the news is doing.
Yeah. Well, it's obviously yanking
people.
But
frightening people is the main thing. And I think it's incredible because you buy the television and then usually buy the package, whether it's Sky or Virgin or whatever you've got, and then you're paying for the electricity and they're mind controlling you and you're paying for the whole thing.
Yeah, and it seems paying twice because they can claim from your straw man as well.
Yes, all that way, yes.
Yeah, so the birth certificate thing, and that's something
When did you wake up then, Dave? What happened for you to wake up then? Because obviously you're living here, aren't you? Because you spent a lot of your adult life in England. What was it that it's not that, it's this?
Yeah, I've been in England since '94, and I just sort of fell in line with pretty much everybody else. But it was, and I'd heard even that 9/11 might have been a fake, but in 2007, something like that. But I hadn't really given it much heed. And then my mother dies really suddenly of motor neuron
Is
disease
that the
in
plaque you went to
2011.
see?
Yes.
I saw that on the
Yeah.
video. You were standing
Yeah.
next to this plaque. That was your mum.
Yeah.
Right, sorry about
Yeah,
that.
she was 67 and a very fit marathon runner. And all of a sudden she gets cut down with motor neuron disease. She was a nurse, and she also delivered HIV treatments to people because she was a believer in all of that, as was I. But she was she was campaigning against 3G masts near a school, and so she was like a bit awake to stuff, and I was aware she was doing that, and I was like, yeah, you're probably right, but I didn't. Like, there's so many other things that are also toxic in our world. But the starting of that journey of me helping her through her illness at times, because it was over a few visits, and her passing, was for me going back to war in 1987 in Angola, part of my national service for South Africa. So for me, that was my wake up. I wrote my book in 2012, 13, and that kind of, started to deal with my own wounds and my own past. And I got to do some book tours, and I got all slaps on the back and well done, and all beers bought for me and all that. And then I was starting to look at, hoaxes in various areas, maybe, stripes in the sky and all that sort of thing. And then I found 9/11 for real, and that was only the beginning of 2015. And that was such a game changer for me, because it was, wow, that's a collusion at a level that I'd just not been, willing to imagine before. And so I started digging deeper, and on a book tour in Johannesburg in 2015, I come across DMT, the spirit molecule, and it changed my life in 6 minutes. And I found the higher self that we're connected to, and it started this journey of, wow, we're not Darwinian explosions that have just randomly come into this beautiful form. No, we are something much greater, something electromagnetic probably, and fractal.
And
so
we're
what
full
is
of
that?
red brick.
Full of red brick.
Red brick. Melted red brick.
Yeah. Oh, you mean us?
Where we live is just covered. There must have been many more
Yeah.
buildings, a lot more people, and everything's been melted.
Yes. I got some interesting ideas on that, but yeah, that's and that we are this higher, we're something else. So then I go back to, because I kind of stumbled over flat Earth a little bit, a few weeks before, months before, I'm not sure, but I go back to it again and say, okay, this is worth a look. Now that I know what I know, I've got to look at this again. And I did, and within days of really searching at looking at flat Earth, I was like, okay. And it was quite exciting at the beginning. It's like, wow, if this is true, it means that our entire world is just a a hoax. And that's why it's so important for people to realize that there's no any table, depending on which propaganda you're reading, because they're all maintaining at the top government table, they're all maintaining this hoax of improbable gravity holding humans upside down on a ball. In fact, I just did an interesting video on the 8-inch per mile squared lie. I think 8-inch per mile square is disinfo that has been sown into the flat Earth community on purpose, Karen. I've done a video on that.
You mean like it's 8 inches a mile, but when we get to 2 miles, it's squared?
Yeah, it's nothing like that. It should be for every 1,000 meters you go forward, you go down 600, or you go up 600, depending on where you happen to be or what route you happen to take. Because what they've done is they've tricked us by saying, you live on a globe, this is the model, look at this ball here, poof, now it's a piece of paper. Now we're going to draw that globe on a piece of paper. It's exactly the same thing. Don't go look directly into my eyes. Don't look anywhere else. This piece of paper with a circle on it is exactly the same as the spherical ball that I just presented you. And of course they're not. The piece of paper is a plane, a flat plane. And they're trying to say this circle, which is a 3D column, in 3D that would be a column, the circle is a representative of that globe. Now all you need to do is apply some mathematics, and then we will be able to work out how much your ship is going to go down or up.
It got me when it was water seeks its level. I'd never really thought about it in that way, and I suddenly thought, all those oceans. Oh my God. That was it for me. I didn't even need the maths or anything. I just suddenly, it hit me.
Well, according to USGS, there is only one ocean. They're all connected. We just give them Indian, Atlantic, Arctic, and so on. We give them different names, but it's one body of water. The seas might sometimes, like the Black Sea or whatever, they're not necessarily connected. They're not directly connected to the oceans. But there's one ocean and there's one level, and that was for me, was that the 8 inches per mile squared was enough to say, look, I've never seen that. I grew up, my dad's in the shipping game.
I know, because at that rate, I'd have to sort of, say Reading, I'd be driving up or down. I would see it. I'd be thinking, we came from up there or down there, whichever way round the maths goes.
Well, Karen, what you're not understanding or standing under is that relativity says that you're always on the top. Which is obviously, they give you that when you're 6 years old, and you can't figure out, well, if that means that I'm on the top, that means that Joey, who I was visiting just 5 minutes ago, he's slowly rolling down the side of the ball is rolling away as I continue to be on top. And Joey, he's now below me because I remain on top. None of it makes sense. And so, but what I say
how do we all remain on top then? Because we all are on top. So how do we all remain on top?
Because it's flat, like the paper that they try and get you to.
I know why. Because it ain't one of those things.
Yeah, because it's not. The thing is that they bang on about you flat earthers don't have a model. Well, let's use the model that you've got. Your model is not a flat piece of paper. In fact, you hate the idea that it's flat, which is so stupid.
Well, actually, if you look up any of NASA's documents, old ones which they've released, everything is FLAT turned into a ball. It's one way, and then they have to turn it into a ball. So surely that just goes against everything. Anyway, NASA are now into cognitive engineering, which is mind control. Do you think that's really strange? I thought they were supposed to be going to the moon. No, they're into mind control. Yeah.
Sure, that's got to be like a 60-year-old newsreel, because they've always been into mind control.
What I'm saying is, on the bottom of their video, it's got NASA with whatever it is research centre, and that is a cognitive engineering centre.
Well, what they've done is they've spun off to create a new business of one of their little internal businesses.
Or they were always the business, and this is where the media goes to get their news. They go to NASA to get their news.
Yeah, MK Ultra never went away. It just changed names on the door. Just like flu never went away. It just changed names. A branding company came up with something like a beer name.
Do you know what? Right, I actually think that they're showing us what we're living on, because they use the UN map. And when you see the UN map, if people can, it's not imagination, but on top of this is this grid thing, like a bullseye thing. That is the Union Jack on top of a star map. So you already know what we're living on.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, but the point I just want to
I want to know what's round us. That's what I want to know. I want to know, what, are we this thing in the middle of nothing and there's nothing else?
Whoa. Yeah, well, that's getting into...
I want to know what's beyond us. They won't help us to work out what's here, and your mind just goes, I just want to know what we're in still. It was always the same thing. I want to know where we are. What, are we just in a box, or in a star, what is it?
Well, I think I know the answer to that, and you only need to look in nature to find clues, and that is that in nature, everything needs a container. Every fruit, every vegetable, every tree has a bark, has a skin, has a peel, and in that case, our world is a micro or a macro of that micro. So if you had to take an orange as your micro, then the universe that we observe is everything inside of the pith, inside of the white skin. That's right. Just as you go in through the orange, you get that white pith.
Yeah. We're looking at your electromagnetic Trinity Taurus model at the moment, so that fits in with this that's being shown. on the screen.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so everything is happening for us. All the stars that we see, everything is happening inside of the orange. And we are essentially, if you cut the orange through its equator and opened it up, then we're kind of like in that section, maybe a little lower than halfway, but we're in, because heavier things settle lower and light things they take up more room, and they don't, they're not as heavy. So I envisage that it's like the Hebrew conception, really it looks like an eyeball cut through, with all the rocks and the stones at the bottom of the balloon, and the gases at the top, and the water that we see as ocean simply holds itself inside of the balloon, and with the rocks protruding, and we call them continents. So I think there's a skin, and I would suggest even that skin is not necessarily maybe crystalline, but it's not necessarily fixed and rigid. It might actually breathe. It might actually move, and that movement might cause tidal action and winds. So I start to wonder whether we aren't actually sort of like part of God, or part of creation, in that if you imagine inside of there are microorganisms that are in colonies living inside forests and fields of your gut, for example, and then they can live in there for years and so on, and for them those years are generations of lifetimes of experience of a world in which they have no idea that you are simply a being moving around. For them, an earthquake would be perhaps you've had too much to drink and you've thrown up, and there's a whole tsunami of stuff that happens to those little creatures. The survivors rebuild the colony. Well, the same could be true at the macro level, that we're inside God's belly, inside God's lungs, inside God's body. Perhaps we're on God's liver. That's why they say you've got to live here. Liver is also a porous material in your body, which can absorb
Can I ask you
water.
something then? What do you think? Because every time we talk about that, and I just think, yeah, but we're in some sort of simulation at the same time. Like, what are we? We robots?
Well,
Androids?
yeah, I mean that's one way
We're
of
just
thinking
living
about
ones. Mickey. I've started seeing Mickey. He had open heart surgery. They had to stop his heart, so he actually died for a minute or two. He said he went somewhere. It's like quantum leap, but they said it's not your time, and he came back. Obviously, he's here, and I'm going out with him. But
Awesome.
it's like the other side, and someone else said the same thing, and I think it's like quantum leap. When we leave here,
Okay.
we quantum leap somewhere else.
Yeah, so in the Bible it says God created us in His image. Image could be either we look like God, so God is just a massive version of you, or image is imagination, and we are simply having an experience in God's dream. And in God's dream, God has created this world to come and experience itself. And in order to do that, because if you are everything, and all things and no thing at the same time, then the only way you can perhaps experience yourself, highs and lows and taste and smell, is to create an avatar with which your consciousness can come and have come and have these experiences. And that's possibly what might be the whole story here, is that it's simply God saying, let me go and experience myself out. There are levels of that, and there's many cultures that used to say there were 7 levels of sort of consciousness, from the God consciousness, the all, to the lowest consciousness. And we may be at the 7th level, lowest, or we might be at the middle level, the earth level, the heart level, perhaps. What this journey is that how are you going to, coming back to the sine wave is a great example of the lower and the higher. The sine wave that I was demonstrating on those images points to at the lower, the heavy stuff, the dark stuff, the red stuff, the magma, and the light stuff, the sky, and the blue, the lungs, all that sort of stuff. So it points to your own body, and in the middle of that is the earth or the heart as anagram. And so I think that the center line that you see there is the point at which we are coming into balance. If you are too much in your yin, too much in your yang, you're too high, you're too low, you're too hot, you're too cold, you might be called bipolar, but you're certainly imbalanced. And that imbalance is what causes trouble in your own pool. And if you imbalance the entire human kind, then it causes trouble perhaps in God's pool, and then that kind of elicits some kind of response from God. Like if your gut had to get into a lot of trouble, you would be feeling like you had a heartburn and all sorts of things, and you'd want to do something about that. And either we in the gut can change ourselves, or maybe we have 500 years to do it. And if not, then there's a reset, and God gets flu, and has a clear out. So, and then from God's point of view, it's like it doesn't really matter. There's all this good, bad, and ugly happening. Obviously, it'll all work out in the end. Where we go back to is love. But I want for my creation to find its own way, rather than need daddy to come down and tell them how to behave, and this is sort of where we've gotten lost, and we've given ourselves over to daddy.
And Andrea, think you're more of like empaths as well?
We've had a conversation on that. I think that the more we've gone through this journey, the more we start to trust our own feelings and intuition. I've heard the term empath, and I hear people tossing it about nilly-willy, and I think sometimes I've heard empaths and they still think they're spinning on a globe and come from monkeys. So how empathic are they? Did you want to say something?
So I think that
Hello, Andrea.
Hi everybody. I think when we're in our flow, in our aligned state, then we all sorts of abilities. I'm sure you've heard of clairaudience, clairvoyant, clairsentient. I think that different people have different abilities, or perhaps we have all of them, and maybe it's stronger in one or the other. But it takes us really being present and aligned, and to do that, you have to be able to have an expanded heart space.
Do you know what I think? I think that because obviously you're an empath, aren't you, Andrea? Empaths, we have it from children. We don't somehow lose it. Children have it, and we didn't lose it. We kept it, and it stayed with us. Other people maybe lose it.
I think
sort of like that, isn't it?
Well, I think if I go back to what I think
so what I mean is we've always been like this. It was like we were like it as children, and it has continued through our lives.
But this is my point. I think everybody is. I think that we're born into or we've been conceived into a system that or an environment that is immediately we are suffering some sort of trauma. And that can be just from your mother's vibration. That can be something that you carry from generational vibration. And so there's a...
I know, do you know what? Do you know what? When you talk about that, we are the vibration of when our parents made us. We are the result of that vibration. So it starts even there.
Well, even before then, because now you're then carrying the vibration of them too. So you have all that, we can call it coding if you want to, but all that energy is brought with us. I was looking at Alexander the other day and thinking, he's actually Dave and I. He's Dave and I, born again, and now we get to parent him. And depending on how we parent him, do we continue the karma or the trauma of our lineage or of mankind, or do we change that so that he then is free of that? I do believe that we all come here
I did that. I was on my own, and I suddenly realised that I'd got 3 different children. They were children, not children. And I changed, because I started doing a parent line course, which is telephone counselling. And I was learning about myself and learning about my children. And I gave my children, they were free to be themselves, which I wasn't. But my children aren't like that. So my parents are at one end and my children are at another. They're not like me, but they might be because they're not empaths. So it's sad, but for them, they didn't get what they do, but then they believe in the globe.
If I'm really honest, I think that all of us still have much conditioning and programming to work through, to unfurl. I like that word, and we're still walking through that at the moment. And certainly my journey, I'm dealing with trauma and beliefs and conditioning right in this present moment, and I'm even decided to learn more about it or to walk it so that I can then help others. So I think that we all are still at whatever level. We're still walking through that, and which is why you in the truth community, and I don't really like that label, because I think the bottom line is we're all seeking our way home to our truth. So everybody is in the truth community, but in the truth community, while you still see so much personality, and personality is not, by the way, us. Personality is something that we believe we are, because at the end of the day we all are just spirit, really, in this Andrea form or this Karen form, and we're not the body. So I think that
I have a book up there, Andrea. It's called Healing the Shame That Binds You.
Well, that's interesting actually, because I can bring back to the last 2 years. In the last 2 years, the use of shame to bind
That's
people
what I
into
said
a
to
new
Dave. It's really that's the biggest thing for mankind you can do, is learn who you are as a person. It really helps everything, because people who know who they are will make different decisions to the ones that don't.
Well, it's almost unlearning who you are, so that you can learn or remember who you are, because the unlearning part is the untethering from the dependencies that we have on people or the material world. And so you almost have to unlearn that. You almost have to detach from all of that. You have to heal from all of that, so then you've got more space for remembering,
because
or allowing.
In life, it's much easier to be angry than happy. And you have to almost teach yourself to be a happy person, because life changes, whether, like maybe yours is all this moving around, it's stress, people get divorced, whatever it is. There are big things going on. You've got to then be in your new life and learn to be happy. And because it's easier to be grouchy and ugly. It is. It's harder to be happier. But if you, and then you learn to be...
I don't know that it's easier. I think that we have so much repressed rage in us, and remember, anger and all those negative emotions are not really acceptable in society or in families. We would have grown up where you would try anything to stop your child feeling, the child feeling sad, or anything to stop the child feeling angry. Those weren't acceptable. And so we weren't taught.
And also, they didn't think about us growing up and remembering what they said.
Actually, not only you have it as memory, but you have that emotion, you have that energy that you never got to experience.
Yeah, as a kid.
In your nervous system, it doesn't go away, which is actually what I believe is dis-ease. I think that cancers and heart problems and all the issues that we have actually stem from stagnant energy and emotion in our bodies. And when we see anger, it's really just it's the almost like the pressure cooker, just the bubbling up of the pressure cooker. Because we've all got it trapped. So actually, I think we're walking around. Most people have rage about stuff that they never got to fully express because we're not taught to. We're not taught that it's okay for a child to actually express his rage. We want to stop it. We want them to stop, and so often we'll even punish them for expressing themselves, which is not freedom of expression. And now, of course, in this time, we're seeing a lot of rage because yes, people are. There's a child in them that.
Do you know what I think it is as well, Andrew? I think that as children, we somehow deal with it better than when we're an adult. And when you remember it as an adult, you've got so much more. I don't know. You think, how could I have let me do that? How could because you're an adult now. The child deals with it differently and does what it does, pushes it into subconscious and gets on with life and pretends like it's never happened. And the adult remembers it, and that's the hardest part when you're as an adult, not the child.
Well, I like to think of it this way. Actually, we all are the children that never got to express it in adult bodies. So we're actually walking around in adult bodies with children that are stuck, really.
Yeah, we've got an inner child, yeah.
Which is why daddy, government and mummy medicine, who are now our new parents, can control us, because we are really still children who are in survival, who want to.
That's what I was saying. We haven't really, a lot of us, been treated that well. You know, our parents were who they were with what they knew, and
exactly.
They were more indoctrinated than we probably are.
Well, I wouldn't like to compare. I think it's, you know, if you think about how much more...
In my life, then. That's what I see in my life.
How much access people have to indoctrination these days is more than our parents had. But, of course, they went through world wars, and you know, they were of the generation where... absolutely, you know, our feelings were not really part of the family dynamic.
It takes a few generations to recover from wars as well.
Yeah, I'm generalizing here, but most people would have, you know, they moved through these things. For example, these last 2 years, you know, hopefully there'll be more mindfulness around the trauma that's been put upon people. But actually, you know, what the stark thing for me is that, you know, coming back from South Africa and then being back here after a year, the hauntedness that I see in people's faces is quite stark. So what's happened is people have been traumatized, and the trauma that they carry within them that was never ever expressed is being triggered, and that's for me too. I'm not looking at people and saying it's all them. It's me too. And something that I'm working through. So I think that we are children in adults' bodies, and once we can heal that, then we can start to be in our alignment.
Yeah, that's that bit about knowing who you are as a person. I mean, you can do affirmations, because obviously there was a baby, an infant, a child. You have to reclaim yourself. Only you can look after yourself now. That's what growing up's all about.
Well, it's a maturation process, and I think somehow we miss out on that. You know, if you think about back to the tribal times where people would have gone through initiation at 13 or 14 or 15 or whatever it is, that doesn't happen anymore. It certainly doesn't happen in the Western world. It's we just stay in a system that keeps on being our mommy and daddy, you know, school, university, and then into jobs where we're told what time to be at work and how we need to behave, and so we never need to mature. So It's a
And the one
process
thing,
of
and that's something else we've lost, is that no one wants to be responsible for themselves anymore. It's always someone
absolutely,
else's fault.
absolutely. Well,
And
I
a
think
lot of
that's
people are
probably
narcissists now.
well, I think there's a spectrum of narcissism in all of us. If I'm honest, I think that we have to reparent ourselves, and absolutely, I think the most important thing is self-responsibility, self-mastery, and no one can do that for you. No one's coming to save you. You have to save yourself. There is no, yeah, the hero is not outside. It's in you. It's the Christ within, and
the woman in the mirror.
yeah, it's the man or the woman in the mirror, and it is absolutely about taking responsibility for for everything, really. And then you don't rely on outside to tell you how to be. You're back in alignment, and then if we go back to the question about empath, then I think you are those you're open to those powers, those skills, those which were always ours, but have been over the years dumbed down, and then we are in creator power. That's the essence of who we are. But it's I think we're walking that at the moment. I think there's a major purge going on on Earth at the moment, mind, body, soul, and it's up to us to take responsibility for that individually. And then through that we can learn to love with compassion, love with unconditionally. But we're still mostly walking through that. I like to believe that even those people who people like to claim are asleep, which they are, they will come to. That's my hope, and I know the work that Dave and I do or want to do is to try and help our brothers and sisters with that walk, because shit, it's hard. And if we can rather stop being the lifting each other up than one-upmanship where we're bashing each other down, then we're going to see a better place to live.
And closer to the way that God wants
exactly.
Intends. Because nature is meant to live in harmony with itself. This idea that we are simply warring beasts that evolved out of the slime.
That's their lie, isn't it? Because we've always been at war, but we weren't.
No, we weren't always at war, and it's the nature of this paradigm, and perhaps the one before, but certainly this paradigm, that they've kept us in a constant state of this prison camp is going to fight against that prison camp there, whether it be Russia or America or whatever. So so that's the nature of the trick that we're in, and we realize that it's going to continue playing its way out until something significant happens, or perhaps there's enough of a shift in that so-called consciousness that a different way emerges. But I say to people,
that's why I think it's so important to do the work, because actually to bring things into balance, because by the way, nature will always find balance. It always wants to bring things back to balance, which is what I think we're walking at the moment.
Yeah, and so I'd say to people that we're like that 10 puppies in a cage, and only 3 puppies worth of food is thrown in every morning, and those puppies start to fight each other, and the big puppies take the most, and the little puppies cower in the corner. And for generations this has happened to the human story, and as a consequence, the adult dogs are really very wounded. And
you've got to be happy in yourself, haven't you?
Happy, yeah. I mean, there's but that's an interesting way of putting it. But I think happy in yourself and actually having joy in this life. But is it for me to say that someone who knows none of these things that we see, they go along in their life happily, just doing their thing and having a happy life, and that's great. But I really think that that's sort of like they've been seduced or damaged into simply accepting a status quo and being happy in the prison, rather than saying no, we're not meant to be prisoners. We are the divine expressing itself here, and our journey should be one that's much higher. And in order to walk that way, you have to alchemize all of these truths and begin to unpick the damage that was done to your forefathers and yourself. In order to walk.
I've wondered. They totally mined where we live to death, and so most of it was over by the early 1900s. And it's almost like we're the great-grandchildren or the great-great-great-grandchildren of the miners.
Yeah, I mean that may well be true, but we've travelled over so much land. There is so much open, free land in this
but
world.
there's so much abandoned now, Dave. Hospitals, schools, villages, towns, churches
as well. Well, we can't maintain a lot of that stuff as well. It's harder for us to maintain because of the way they were built. They were partially mud-flooded buildings generally. So I see a lot of that decay around. But in terms of mining this place, I'm not sure I buy that one. I think mining is often being used as a way of we know that the coal industry was designed as the petrochemical industry designed as a way of fleecing people. There's endless oil on this earth, and endless energy if we know how to harness it. And of course, that's all been put under firewalls and paywalls and so on. And we call it nuclear and have to pay a lot for it and to dispose of it and all this sort of stuff now.
I know.
So we're in a system that always designed to keep us busy through one way and another.
Yeah, right now all the prices are going up because of this thing in Ukraine, and yet we don't get much from Russia, so it shouldn't have made any difference whatsoever. And they've used it. They just use things all the time, but people believe it.
And if anything, it's that Shanghai story. I don't know. I'm not getting clean information on that. But apparently, the logjam at Shanghai Harbor, which is one of the most important shipping hubs in the world, so much goes through there. The backlog is such that it's also going to have. So
Gillian noticed. Gillian in Australia was watching the shipping app and noticed for months they've been keeping the ships out in the harbour. Out. They've stopped them coming in.
Yeah, I think even that blocking of the Suez Canal was intended to, start to interrupt the normal flow of things. I think this has been coming. We saw it in Durban, around Durban Harbour, like there was a backlog of freight, and I think that there's going to be more. It's instead of putting three puppies worth of food in the cage, it'll be two puppies worth. They're creating more a hardship. And
I think though the difference is how are you going to deal with that hardship, and that's where the alchemizing comes in. Because are you going to be the person that will go and fight or whatever to get your peace, or keep what's yours to yourself? It's the thing when you say we just need to be happy, I think we need to be able to experience all the emotions and let them we're not going to get rid of challenge just because we're alchemized or whatever. Challenge is there to help us grow, but it's how we are present in that experience. And so the food shortages, it looks like, will be coming down the pipeline, and how are we going to walk through that? And that's the test, really, and that's why these tests can often awaken people, because it's those tests that will push us to see how much we have grown or how much we need to grow.
So I was saying, master of your own ship. I put that on my flyer that I handed out in South Africa, and I was saying to people that if you know that there is you're captain of the ship, and there's a treacherous night ahead, getting through the ice fields and so on. The captain who's got a cool head, got his stuff together, and he's got the energy to be at the wheel all night, is going to be the one that gets his crew through. The one who's frightening his crew by saying we're going to crash and it's going to be terrible and so on, he's going to have his whole crew in a panic. He's going to be she will be under greater pressure. and we'll have less success getting through the night. So I think that's why some of this constant fear porn that we see being spewed out in the truth community is designed to keep people in the game, keep people in the battle, and arguing or defending particular energy centers, and in a way that you might just as well be arguing for or against Putin or whatever. It's that it's still holding your energy, it's all still entertaining you, and I'm interested in these things, and frightening, and I'm interested in these things. I want to see what's going on, but I'm not going to immerse myself in the narrative. I'll float over it. I won't need to take a position against this one or for that one. It is part of the storyline that's being played out here, no matter how many people's news feeds you try and fill with opposition information or whatever, counter propaganda. So so for me is like the example that Jesus gives of walking it and talking it and living it, despite the craziness, is probably the best, because probably the very worst of the conspiracies that come up have a good segment of truth to them, and that's the nature of this world that we live in, and it's a product of whatever insanity started this current epoch, this current way of doing things. But like we said, nature has a way of coming around and cleansing every winter, and this is maybe what we're going through. And how are you going to meet the winter? Prepared or freezing and shivering with fear?
I think prepared, but also the prepared. How do you say that? I can't say that. It's about your mind, body, soul, and because at that point, the point that you've alchemized that, or you are in alignment or in flow, then you are able to walk it with surrender and absolute faith in that whatever comes. So it's a bit like the passing of the Red Sea. They had to walk through the Red Sea and trust. And you can only be in complete trust and surrender once you realize you're not separate.
That's a good
that
analogy.
you are part of the one. But that takes detaching from the conditioning and the programming, because we still on many levels believe that we are separate.
And finite beings, when in fact we're infinite beings of light. We have, I suppose, this opportunity.
Incarnation is finite.
This avatar is finite, and the experience of you or me is a finite experience in that way. But the higher entities that we're attached to, or lower perhaps, it may be a higher and lower thing here, that there's lower entities and higher, yin and yang, black and white in a chessboard system. That there are, that you want to perhaps take a level of you've gone up a grade, or you've raised the tempo and the vibration of your segment of the consciousness, and if it were a game, like two teams, I suppose, vying for the championship, then the dark team are going to do their best to hold sway over the consciousness, and therefore get to be dominant in the way that the strongest puppies become dominant in that cage, and the meek will inherit the earth, I suppose, perhaps we could say, and that in time there will be a rebalancing, but to I think it's to turn the other cheek in a way, and not be gentle as the dove, wise as the serpent.
Just playing on the screen now, because I put it on as one of the videos, is the student makeover in the bathroom. I didn't know it was going to go there, and I've just seen you drag all this horrible stuff out of the We've
I was
just
doing my
watched.
stand-up.
Why not going through the Red Sea? We're dragging this stuff out of the drain.
Well, actually, that is very, very very apt and synchronistic, because actually that is exactly what we need to do. We need to drag that that darkness out of us,
Out of the pipes, even
out of the pipes, and trust me, it is. I am walking it as we speak, and it is the hardest thing I've ever done.
Aww.
And it you know, I want to use whatever survival behaviors I've got to not deal with it, and distractions, but at the same time I have this deep knowing that it's the walk I have to walk, and so I have to put one foot in front of the other. But I understand why people are choosing to not want to see the truth, because the truth is hard to look at and out.
And some people are easier to look inside, and some people are looking easier to find. A lot of people are good at the looking outside, but not so good at the inside. I've come across living off grid.
Yes, I have a saying. I used to say to people. Sorry, my phone rang as well. Then, don't look at my garden. Look at your own.
Man in the mirror. But I found that some people that are in the sort of more, like to go and bang the bongo drums and get a kumbaya together around the fireplace. They're better at doing the inner work, the meditation stuff and that kind of quiet, still stuff, which is so important. They're better at that than perhaps the looking at the outside stuff, and that's probably why the Portugal thing was difficult.
That's why we like our cars and our holidays, and that keeps you all busy. How do you live then, Dave? Do you live inside out or outside in?
Well, it should be from the outside in. From the inside out. Everything should emanate really from your heart, and it should be what ideally would be expansive and in love, and we would be exuding heart energy. But that requires you to have done the work on the left side and the right side, or the top and the bottom. And that's, the top stuff is all your spiritual stuff, and the bottom stuff is all your truth about who we are and what this place is. So I've found plenty spiritual people that really can't get over the idea they're not monkeys and they don't live on the side of a spinning ball. And then on the other side, you'll get people who can see that they don't live on a spinning ball. They can see almost every possible conspiracy out there, but do you think they can connect to their spiritual self? Not a bit of it. And I've got good friends in the flat earth community who are exactly in that camp, super aware of that left brain stuff, completely unable to reach the stuff in the right, in the right hemisphere. So that's part of my journey, because for all good reasons. I mean, when we moved out of our house, we couldn't pay the rent in 2019. When we moved out a month before the Globe Light tour, I thought we'd be 3 months homeless, And here we are, more than 30 months down the track, and still sort of living out of a bag. But we've been forced, or it's enabled me at various times. Once in Canterbury, when we met Mez, and she gave us some accommodation, and we went out to the flat earth community, asked for some financial help, and the Americans were so generous to. And then in South Africa, when I was back to the wall, I hit the road, hit the beach with the activism, and it turned things around. People were supporting that. And I want to continue doing that, now that I'm back in England. I would love to do it from the security of a home base, but I want to do that. And if anyone's still listening to this far in, then, maybe they know someone who can help us with some short-term accommodation. Longer term would be great in return for a little bit of labor. And also maybe to try and get to borrow some wheels for a little while, I would love to be able to be mobile, and I can't do any of that stuff until I'm mobile. So, if you want to get in touch with me at Trinity4man@gmail.com, you might have some ideas. Because before, like a year and a half ago, friend called Nigel became a friend. He, over in Norfolk, he says to another friend, Simon, do you know somewhere where Dave could get a place? We ended up 2 months, maybe a little longer, in this place called Letton Hall, in like a stately home that is definitely a mud flood, and it's clad on the outside, hiding the red brick on the inside. Down in the basement, you've got all big basement, you've got all these windows that have been bricked in.
Wow.
And yeah, so I did a really good video on that on my old channel, looking at the inside of that building. But that accommodation came through, like the ideas of a couple of flat earthers who thought, yeah, let's help these guys out. And I've had that Dr. Law arranged for a cookout at Karen B's Oktoberfest that raised $1,200 for the family, for us. And these have been gifts along the way. Ceiling Fan Man, other people have just stepped up and given us money when it's just been like, wow, how are we gonna fund tomorrow? Where are we staying tonight? And then money appears, or we work something, maybe work something out. So I've had a lot of that over the last 2.5 years, and it's been quite a journey, and obviously strengthening at times, not, but overall, it's part of the story. And so I want to continue doing what I'm doing. We've got some temporary accommodation for a few weeks, but let's see what comes up over the next few months. I mean,
well, hopefully somebody's listening and can help you.
Yeah, maybe. You've got to put it out there and set your intention. We know what we want to do. I'm working for this creation. I really hope not to have to go and work for the beast, the dead organization, the corpse oration. I don't want to do that, and I don't take any money from the government for anything, child benefits or anything like that, and haven't done for many years. So, for me, this is this is like a mission, by God, as it were, and I want to continue doing that. But of course, we don't have a unified, community who are in the same kind of way, wanting a certain sort of activism. But part of what I'd like to do is to, offer myself to be able to do work with people, Andrea and I, to do work with people to try and help them address their own traumas, and the inside and the outside, because it's obviously, as you said, it needs to be the mind, body, and soul, and inside and outside. So working on that is something that we've been doing, and for many years, because by 2016 I didn't need to look at flat Earth anymore. I was more interested in myself, how do I heal myself, how do I mend myself, and so then we had our flat Earth baby. Yeah, wow, yellow egg. Right.
I'll just say that we've been going now for nearly an hour and 40 minutes. Do you think that's okay?
Yeah.
You've put out that obviously that if anybody can help, so that's maybe a good place to stop it.
Yes, perfect. It's not an egg. What is it?
I want those sweeties. Remember, I want the sweeties.
It's a cosmic egg. Oh, wow. Because Alexander knows that we live inside an egg, a cosmic egg. We're in the egg.
Yeah, I can tell a few times that you feel a bit emotional about certain bits. I suppose it's a journey. You've got yourself here, so be proud that you've got yourself here.
Oh, wow, what an incredible story. I hope to write a book about it someday. But yeah, it's been an incredible journy to get here, and we're grateful to be here.
I'm glad that you're back, though, Dave, and I do want to meet you.
Cool. Well, I really hope to do activism in the street around the UK this summer. And try and encourage people to join me, maybe, have little hangouts, meetups, things like that, where possible. But obviously, at this point in time, I'm still manifesting the vehicle, and
yeah, you don't know whether you're coming or going right at this precise moment, do you?
At the moment, we're just we're pausing, and we've had to learn to do that a lot over the last few years, pause here and pause there, realizing that we're unable to make another move. We just don't have the means of making that move, and we're going to have to wait for that window to open. And funnily enough, when we finally made the decision to leave South Africa, we set a date, and within about 2 days of us setting the date, the UK announced that it was scrapping the requirement for any PCR test on the way in, which they'd already moved away from the 10 days quarantine, but finally that, and just so it fell away on the 18th, and within a week we flew out, and we hadn't planned it like that. It just worked in our favor that we were able to do that. But as I said at the beginning, I don't think I said it, Virgin Atlantic banned us for life because we wouldn't play their game. Anyway, sounds like it's time to go. Karen, it's been
Well,
really fun.
I almost have to, because I think I've played nearly all the videos on your channel now.
Cool. Okay. Okay, cool. Well,
Oh, Dave, it's been
nice.
amazing.
Yeah, and we will meet.
Alexandria! It's been amazing, and Andrea, thank you very much. Obviously, it's great. It's always
you're
great when
welcome.
Andrea comes in.
It's lovely to speak to you, and yeah, just keep on doing the work, right? Because that's the important part. I think we've come here to alchemize ourselves, and then from that place we can learn to be better to each other. So yeah, it's been lovely talking to you. Lots
Yeah,
of love to
welcome
you.
back. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you.
Well, catch up soon. But
Okay,
if we just say goodbye for the hangout, and then I'll just say goodbye quickly afterwards. But
Okay.
for the hangout, thank you very much, Andrea, Dave, and Alexandria, and chat room. Thank you very much.
Okay.